Hello everyone, and welcome back to another R tutorial video. And in this video, what I want to do is I want to continue our discussion on legends for figures in R. And if you remember our previous video on legends, we generated a basic legend in base R with the legend function. And we went through the process of defining all of the different parameters that were necessary to just get the legend where we wanted it with the right colors and right symbols. So what I want to do now is just to briefly recap one of the reasons why I believe GGPLOT2 is just easier to work with. And that is I want to I don't want to say recreate, but I want to recreate the same legend in GGPLOT2 and just show you that it's basically by default included. And this is also a good chance to just review from scratch how we would go about building a plot in ggplot. So really quickly, let's just rerun the code here. So we've got our legend up in the upper right hand corner, we've got it color coded, and we've used the X's. So let's go ahead and just recreate this plot with the legend in ggplot. So the way this works, just to recap, we start off with a call to ggplot. Inside of ggplot, we make a call to the data frame that we want using the data parameter. So now anything we call after this will have access to the iris data frames dataset. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to set up our points, which is a geom_point. And this is going to have in it our mappings. And so just to recap here, mappings are using the aesthetic function, the AES function, tell the ggplot code what variables drive what graphical parameters. So in this case, we want the X variable to be driven by sepal.length. We want the Y variable to be driven by sepal.width. And we want the colors to be driven by species. So those are the three graphical parameters that we want to be driven by data. We also want to include a different shape, but because it's static and it doesn't change with any of the data, we put it outside of this AES function call, and we're going to put a 4 there. The next thing we need to do is we need to set up our scale, which tells the code, okay, we've said we want color to vary with species, but what colors do we want to use? So that's the scale_color color, and then we're going to use the brewer option because the brewer option gives us access to those color brewer palettes. And we're going to do PALETTE, and then we're going to pick dark capital D2. So if we run this code here and we run it again, apparently I have made a mistake. I think that should be singular. Let's try that. There we go. So if we run that now, you will see that what we've created is the same graphic we had before, where we have the species color coded, but in this case we've already included a legend that is properly colored, properly labeled, and properly sized and shaped. So you can see that without having to make this separate legend call and make sure that all of our parameters matched, which wasn't necessarily easy to do, ggplot2 takes care of all that for you. So what I want to do is begin working on how we can tweak these legends a little bit. I will say this, in terms of what I'm calling advanced legends, there is a lot more that can be done with ggplot2 than base R, especially when it comes to sort of what's included by default. a lot of the sort of improvements that we could get on legends in base R require additional packages or far more complicated coding than GGPLOT2 requires. So in my personal opinion, I would say this is about as far in terms of just getting a legend in the upper right corner. This is about as far as I would ever go with the base R. And if it didn't do what I wanted it to do, I would probably abandon ship and jump to ggplot. But anyway, so let's talk about some of the things that we can do in base R that are a little bit more advanced. So again, we're not going to go into other packages. We're not going to talk too much about any of the sort of multiple lines of code that you can set up to do things. We're just going to go with what's included directly in that legend function in terms of how we can sort of make the legend look a little nicer. And the first thing that we can do, let's actually copy our legend and our plot. We'll copy everything just to make sure that this runs properly. So we'll copy everything over here. So this is our legend. So again, if we rerun the, actually it'll probably be faster just to run it from here. If we rerun the plot, and then we rerun legend, we're getting an error because the plot has to be called first. Okay, so something that you might want to do is you might want to remove the box from around the legend. And you do that with the parameter bty, or boundary type, or box type. And if you set that equal to a lowercase n, right, if we run this, so we run the plot, and then run that legend, you'll see that we've removed the box around the legend. The other thing we can do if we choose to is we can add a title, and you do that with the title parameter. And now as a character string, we can type in whatever we want the title to be. I would recommend doing something like legend. Right, so again, we have to rerun the plot. We have to rerun legend. It's going to throw an error at us. We're going to rerun plot, rerun legend. And you'll see now that we have included a title of our legend. Now you could obviously pick something slightly more descriptive like species, for example. So again, this is about as far as I would go in terms of messing around with the legend in base R. There are a couple of things you can do in terms of font size and color, font color, but this is about as far as the base R package will get you without having to do a significant amount of extra coding and setting things up. And I want to wrap this up by talking about the idea of placement. So what we've done is we've sort of defaulted to these sort of keywords, right? You can do top right, you can do bottom right, you can do left, you can do center. And those work really well in terms of snapping things to the plot, but sometimes it's not exactly what you want. And as I mentioned before, you can use X and Y to sort of tweak where you want to place it in the coordinate system framework. The problem that I have with that is that invariably it becomes trial and error in terms of figuring out exactly where you want to place the legend. So just keep in mind, especially with base R, your legends are kind of somewhat limited in terms of what you can do. Trying to do more advanced things typically requires a lot more coding and oftentimes trial and error in terms of getting things exactly where you want them. So I know we didn't really cover a whole lot of new code in this video, but I hope it was a good review. If something felt confusing, please go back and rewatch it. And as always, please reach out. Thank you.